Hey, so I was really tempted, grasshoppers, to deliver this entire lecture to you, the 20 minutes that it is, wearing my sunglasses like this because I'm outside. It's a beautiful day. I just spoke with y'all, but I'm not gonna. So instead, I'm going to talk to you like this directly about the age of exploration and build on what we just discussed about Pizarro and the Spaniards and all of that. Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty of the history of like who went where, okay? And I'm going to speak over my wind chime, so hopefully you can hear me. I think you'll be able to. Um, and I'm going to start right at the bat screen sharing. So here we go. This is going to be the same module that you were in before. So it's this October, it's this one. October, I just added the 8th to it, basically. Okay, so I'm going to work through this with you. It's important for your notes that you guys realize that at this time in world history, um, the three European powers were really major rivals with one another. And those rivalries play an important role in what these Europeans did when they explored the world, okay? The world beyond their borders, okay? Uh, the three main players in Europe at this time were Spain, England, and France, okay? Spain, England, and France. And you're like, well, Moretti, I took a look at this module ahead of time. Why is Portugal in here then? Portugal's in there because Portugal is one of the first to lead the exploration efforts. And then they got into a main rivalry with Spain. But Portugal does not have the size, military, or influence to really be a player here. So it's really between Spain, England, and France, okay? They're rivals. They're rivals for religious reasons because while Spain and Portugal are both Catholic, France is partially Catholic and partially Protestant, and England is Protestant. So like there's a religious rivalry, there is rivalry to like snag as much land and wealth as possible in order to prove your nation's greatness. So all of this is going on at the time, and you have to realize what's motivating these Europeans. But nowhere in their considerations is the effect that this is going to have on the native peoples to the places that they're going to visit, right? In the case of South and North America here, the Native Americans, these Europeans don't care about the influence it has on them. When they go and strip slaves out of Africa, they're not going to care about the influence it has on the African population because they're infected with like greed and a desire to expand, okay? So that's what you need to understand here. And so you got a map from this period. And this age of exploration period you can see is roughly 1492 to 1750, okay? Seeking to cash in, these European powers are. More pumpkin spice for me, by the way. So we're going to start with Portugal, which is on what we call the Iberian Peninsula, okay? It's right at the end here in Europe. And being on a peninsula, they're very exposed to the ocean, and shipbuilding and stuff is a thing for them. And it kind of starts with this guy named Prince Henry the Navigator, who sets up a school for navigation, okay? And this school becomes extremely popular for anybody that wants to be involved in this enterprise. Exploring the world, if you can successfully do it, does carry a lot of economic benefits, okay? And so people from all over came to this school to learn how to work with the equipment, the maps, and whatever, so they could learn how to explore effectively, all right? So Henry the Navigator sets up this like school, if you will, for exploration that Europeans came to and learned there before they went on their voyages, okay? And some of the key inventions you see listed here, right? The caravel ship, which is a sturdy but relatively lightweight vessel with triangular sails that could capture the wind in any direction. It was a really important invention for Europeans because, prior to this, you really had to have the wind in the right direction in order to go anywhere. But with the caravel ship, as long as the wind is blowing at all, the way that the sails are put together is it can capture that wind to propel you the direction you want to go, right? Meanwhile, this ship is sturdy enough to handle the ocean, but also lightweight enough to be able to navigate inland into rivers and such. So this was an important invention that gave Europeans an upper hand, okay? Meanwhile, you see on here the compass. And the compass, of course, you guys know, tells you what direction to go. Now, this is another one of those inventions that really has its origins with like the Muslims and the Ottoman Empire. And the Europeans acquired this invention and put it to work to explore. All right. Gunpowder, we've already talked about, gives you a significant tactical advantage in battle. Again, this is not something that Europeans invented. They got it from the Chinese and then they weaponized it. And then the astrolabe, which sounds like a dirty word, like astrolabe. All right. An astrolabe, all it is it's a device by which you measure where you are on your voyage based on like the alignment of heavenly bodies like stars and planets and such. Okay. So it's a navigational tool. The one thing I didn't put on this invention list is maps. The technical term for it is cartography, okay, or map making. Because Europeans developed maps of where they were going, the next voyagers could use them to go even further. And you really see this with Bartholomew Diaz and Vasco da Gama. All right. So if I go to this map here of where people went, right? The first direction that European explorers went was this way. If you can follow my cursor, they went south and east, because remember that Europeans wanted passage to what they called the East Indies, right? And what they meant by that was India and China, because that's where all the good stuff was: the silk, the porcelain, the spices, all of that stuff. There was a craving in Europe for that. And so these guys tried to get to the East Indies by heading east, right? But what happened is that Diaz went along the coast of Africa along the way, and then his crew bailed on him. When they got to the edge of Africa and they ran out of land, they got scared and turned back. So that later Vasco da Gama's guys are going to take the same route because they got these maps now, but this time Vasco da Gama's guys are going to go around the tip of Africa, right, still hugging the coast, and then across over to India, and they're actually going to reach India, okay? And remember, these water routes are necessary because the land routes for the Europeans have been closed off by the Ottoman Empire. The Muslims under the Ottoman Empire control these routes, so the Christian Europe can't get there, okay? So you kind of see how the religious rivalries play out with all of this as well. And so that kind of explains why by sea. Like, why are you going by sea? The Portuguese, in their ethnocentric mindset, right? They had Jesuits, right, or Catholic missionary priests that went with them. And these Jesuits would convert people on the coast to the Catholic religion. Portuguese they also took slaves, African slaves, and I'll be talking about slavery later, but I'm just putting it out there, reminding you of this. And this is very obviously ethnocentric. And so you see this dynamic at work with Portugal. With Spain, the big names, of course, are Christopher Columbus, okay? And Christopher Columbus heads west because the Portuguese have already gone east. And so he's trying to find another route. And so he heads west and bumps into the Americas. You know the story. He thinks he's in India, so he calls them Indians, right? He actually landed in the Bahamas. And immediately, like, you'll read this when you're in my APUS class, some of you. One of his immediate thoughts is when he sees the Native Americans and the savages, as he calls them, is that I can make these people slaves easy. He literally wrote that in his journal. Like, I can make these people slaves easy. They're easy for us to dominate. They don't match our weaponry, right? And this is like, this is his mindset. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. All right. And of course the Spaniards under him are going to dominate what we call today the Caribbean Sea, the Bahamas, and then eventually into Central America. And Spain is actually going to explore and control huge portions of Central and South America, all the way up into what is present day Oregon. Okay, so their claims are going to be huge in the so-called New World, and they're going to be conquering and killing and all that stuff as they go, and forcibly converting people to the Catholic religion. Pizarro and Cortez, conquistadors. You know, and you can look on this map, Pizarro conquered what is known as Peru today. He conquered the Incan Empire there. And then Cortez conquered what we now today call Mexico in Central America, which was the Aztec Empire. Okay. And so, reminding you through cultural hegemony, that's why everybody there that lives there today are, you know, they speak Spanish, they're Catholic, and there's a lot of, you know, cultural ties in to Spain because of the mingling of DNA that ends up happening as these people are destroyed by the Spanish Empire, what we should call a genocide of the Native Americans. Ferdinand Magellan is an interesting cat because seeking to find that route to the East Indies by heading west, like came soon to realize that he was going to head this way, and Ferdinand Magellan's crew is going to come around South America here, go through down here what are known today as the Straits of Magellan, and then keep heading west across the Pacific Ocean until they get to the East Indies and make their way back to Europe. And so Magellan and his crew are the first to what we call circumnavigate the globe. They're the first ones to get in a boat and go all the way around the world, and thus definitively proving that the world is round. Magellan himself does not survive the voyage, because he is killed in what is now the Philippine Islands when there was a tribal warfare going on there that he found himself in the middle of. Most of his men did not survive the voyage, nor their ships. The few that did make it were basically like skeletons by the time they got back to Europe, but they had accomplished something that nobody else had seen before in circumnavigating the world, okay? Bringing fame to themselves. Remember, gold, glory, and God. Glory, right? Oh, I almost did. Sorry about that. All right. So, like, that's the, you know, again, it's all part of the process here. So, what are the effects? All right. Well, Spain is going to bring something known as the encomienda system. All right. And you guys need to remember this because this is super important. All throughout Central and South America, Spain set up these plantations, right? You're like, well, why did they do that, Moretti? Weren't they looking for gold? And well, yeah, they were looking for gold, but they found something better than gold, okay? Cash crops. And in the encomienda system, see, cash crops are better than gold, guys. Gold you dig out of the ground and it's gone. Cash crops can be restored. They can be replanted and harvested again, right? And they're going to plant cash crops in Central and South America that are going to be valuable back in Europe. What are the major cash crops that the Spaniards are going to go after? They're going to go after things like sugar and tobacco, right? And maize, which is kind of like corn, right? But like these things are going to be grown, collected, and sent back to Europe for big money. And these plantations, even rice in some of these instances, and they're going to send that stuff back to Europe and make huge money on it. But these encomiendas are essentially what happens is a Spanish landlord owns this property that's like a plantation and forces the Native Americans to work on that plantation, right? technically, the Spaniards did not view the Native Americans as slaves. They viewed them as like tenant farmers that they were giving protection to, and that they were teaching the Christian religion, in their case, the Catholic religion, through the use of these Jesuit priests. Okay. So, in the mind of Spaniards, right, well, we're giving them Jesus and we're taking all their valuable stuff. That's a good exchange. We're saving their souls and we're taking their stuff. And a lot of these Spaniards, like these landlords and stuff, took wives from the native population and had children with them. So there was literally a mingling of DNA, okay, in South and Central America throughout, okay? It's important for you to realize that not all Native Americans just like resist. I mean, they fought back, but they're just overpowered, right? There was even one famous rebellion in what is now New Mexico up here called the Pueblo Revolt, where under the leader, the Pueblo Native Americans, under their leader Pope, led a rebellion against the Spaniards that was able to hold them off for like something like 8 or 9 years before they finally were defeated by Spain, okay? But you guys can kind of get the picture of all of this, that it's being done by force, that, Spaniards are like kind of justifying what they did by saying, well, we're bringing Jesus, right? So the savages, we're Christianizing the savages, and that's kind of how they defend all these actions. Meanwhile, things get heated between Spain and Portugal to the point that almost a war broke out between Spain and Portugal over possessions in the New World. Let me go back to the map. Portugal not only went east around Africa, but they also went west to South America to what is today Brazil, okay? And if you guys know anything about Brazil, they still speak Portuguese there as a result of Portugal exploring there. So what happened was that with Portugal in the New World and with Spain in the New World, both were making claims that could lead to war. And because they were both Catholic nations, okay, they turned to the Pope to make a decision who gets what in the New World. And originally, a line of demarcation here, this dotted line, was drawn and said that everything east of that line would go to Portugal, i.e., their route to the East Indies. Anything west of this line, the Americas, would go to Spain. Well, Portugal's like, whoa. What about Brazil? Okay? So they redrew the line to what you see here, the second line, the Pope in them, in what was known as the Treaty of Tordesillas. Now, the reason I teach you guys about the Treaty of Tordesillas is because it's an outstanding example of ethnocentrism. Here you've got two European powers, Portugal and Spain, going to another white guy, the Pope, to determine how the land that does not belong to them should be divided up. Do you guys think that the Native Americans had any say in this process? Of course they didn't. They're viewed as savages. And so all of their possessions are being divided up, right, against their will by Europeans. Of course, African slavery is a product of this that we'll talk about later. And so is something we're going to call the Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange, obviously named after Christopher Columbus, is used to describe the back and forth travel of plants and animals that are a result of all these explorations as Europeans seek to make money on this process. The Columbian Exchange is heavily stacked in favor of Europeans, whether they live in Europe itself or whether they are part of the colonies that start getting established in the Americas as a result of this process, okay? This Columbian Exchange is also something that we will be coming back to in future lessons. So that gives you an idea of where Spain and Portugal went, grasshoppers. I will talk about some of these other European nations in the next lesson. Till then, I'll see you guys when I see you.